Hi, Jack from Ringwood Camera House here. Nikon have just released the newest camera in their mirrorless lineup. Boasted as an entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera, the Z5 was made for various shooters in mind. This is a full-frame 24-megapixel camera that can shoot 4K at 30 frames per second. The Z5 lends very close to the mark that the Z6 had set back in its release in 2018. With only a $500 difference, it can be a bit confusing to decide which one to go for. So let's lay out the differences and help you decide which one you should buy. Now these cameras are very similar, but there's a few key differences that set them apart, so let's just break them all down. These cameras in terms of design are very similar, and you wouldn't be blamed for mixing the two up. From the front, these cameras are both very similar, both having the two custom buttons as well as the lens mount release. On the top of the camera is where you start to see some of the differences. On the Z6 on the left hand side you've got the control dial, and on the right hand side you've got a status screen which displays your battery life as well as your camera settings. On the Z5 they've gone without this status screen and they've moved the dial in place of it. So on the top you've just got your dial, no status screen. So for those of you who like to see your battery as well as your camera settings at a glance, you're going to miss out on the Z5. So from the back they do look very similar once again, but it is worth noting that the Z6 has the better LCD screen at 2100 pixels, whereas the Z5 has 1040 pixels. So you're probably going to have a little bit of an easier time exposing on the Z6 as opposed to the Z5. From the side we can see that the two cameras have different card slots. On the Z6 you've got a single XQD card. Now though this is a little bit more reliable and safer than an SD card, a lot of people complained about it upon release. Whereas on the Z5, you've got two UHS 2 SD card slots. You can use them together for overflow storage, automatic backup, or you can use them to separate the types of files that you get out of the camera, so RAW and JPEG or stills and video. Both of these cameras have the same 3.96 million dot electronic viewfinder. So both these cameras have very similar sensors. The Z5 lens at 24.3 megapixels, whereas the Z6 lens at 24.5. Now you won't really see much of a difference for resolution in these cameras, but what you will notice the difference is that the Z6 has a backside illuminated sensor, which increases its low light performance. Although Nikon have stated that the new processor inside the Z5 means that it'll have equal low light performance to the Z6. So both of these cameras will pretty much perform equally in terms of low light performance. Both of these cameras have Nikon's 5-axis in-body stabilization. So the continuous shooting is one of the more noticeable differences in these two models. The Z5 is capped out at 4.5 frames per second, whereas the Z6 can shoot at 12 frames per second. So people who are shooting sports and wildlife are going to want to lean towards the Z6. Now both these cameras can shoot really nice 4K video up to 30 frames per second, but the Z5 has a 1.7 times crop at 4K. So when you're going from 1080 to 4K, your image will crop in a little bit. You're going to lose some of the wider end of your lenses, so this can be annoying sometimes. So if you're a video shooter, you might lean towards the Z5, but if a crop doesn't bother you, then the Z5 is still a great choice. None of these cameras can shoot log internally, but it can output and log at 10-bit via the HDMI. For battery life, the Z5 comes out slightly better, rated at 470 shots, as opposed to the Z6's 380 shots. Now both these cameras paint a very similar picture. They're both full-frame mirrorless cameras, they've got a similar resolution, they've got great 4K video at 30 frames per second, same in-body stabilization and similar ergonomics. But there are a few key differences that are worth pointing out. So when you pay the $500 for the Z6, what exactly are you getting? Well, you're getting a status screen at the top, you're getting 12 frames per second continuous shooting, so that's very good for wildlife and sports photographers, and you're also getting uncropped 4K full sensor readout, which is very good for video shooters. Now when you're paying less money for the Z5, you're getting most of the things that you would get in a Z6. You're gaining two SD card slots and better battery life, but you're losing out on a slower FPS at 4.5, and you're also getting a crop of 1.7 at 4K. Do you think it's worth paying the extra $500 for the Z6? Or do you think it's okay to save a little bit of money and then just not get as much features wise? Let us know. If you're still unsure which one is right for you, then feel free to contact us via our email, phone, or our website. If you did enjoy the video, then please like it as well as share it around and follow the page for more videos. Happy shooting.